How y'all doing, everyone? This review, I'm going to go over the core rule book of the tabletop role-playing game Symbaroum, published by, sorry if I mispronounce this, Jarnigen or Jarnigen. It's a Swedish company, which is one of the appeals about this, because most of the time you think tabletop role-playing games, you think America. I don't know about England, but I don't know much about foreign-made tabletop role-playing games. But this one, on the other hand, is a Swedish one. You can definitely see from this type, it's a dark fantasy game. And well, I picked this up because I think I saw it once at the hobby store in Oklahoma City, and I saw a couple reviews, so I picked it up and started reading it. Now, before we get into this, just to let you know that I am not very much a player. There's hardly anyone around me that I can set up time to play with. So I usually just like collecting the books and reading them. That's usually fine enough for me. I like reading the settings, how things are set up, just kind of get the imagination sort of setting up right here. So, where to begin? I guess we can start with the setting. The setting takes place, the setting's very narrow, mind you. It's just basically a kingdom south of this great forest and just north of this mountain range. And this is the, this is the kingdom of Ambria. Several kingdoms, all led by a queen. The kingdom of Ambria was set up after the people just moved in there relatively recently. They just left their home just south of the mountains called the Titans. And there was this great war that, by these dark lords, and after winning this war, the land was no longer of real use, so the queen led her people north and claimed the land south of this forest as their own. Now, the forest is of main importance here. And I'll get to that in a second. We're going to talk about the people who live within the forest. These are barbarian tribes that live on the outskirts of the forest. If you look in the slideshow, you can see a picture of the map. You can see all the sections of Ambria. You can see words in the outside of the forest. That's the name of the barbarian clans that dwell there. They stay on the outskirts because they are forbidden, by their culture and by their leaders, and they have taboos to going into the forest. This is a major importance why. In the kingdom of Ambria, Yendaros is the capital, so with all that goes with it, the queen, the main order of Magica, main church is there. But another important feature is a Thistlehold, which is a city near the right near the outer edge of the forest of Davokar. And this place is a great place for people to go in, get supplies to go adventuring in here. The idea of this game, in basic, is to where you play, your group tries to enter this forest, this forbidden forest, and try to collect pieces of an ancient civilization called Symbaroum. Not as easy as it sounds, of course, and not just because of the monsters that dwell there, and there's plenty of that, and a lot of other knowns. See, the Symbaroum is an ancient civilization that has, 1,000 years ago, just went down. No one knows why. And there's this great darkness about it that people entering in there ended up have potentially become corrupted. And if you get too corrupted, they become abominations. So, which isn't a good thing. So, okay, so about the character creations, it's a point-buy system game, meaning that you shape your character's attributes, which are 8 of them, into by buying points. They say have 80 points divided up between your 8 attributes. None of them can be less than 5, and only one of them could be as high as 15. And that has to, so there's a limited range between 5 and 15. But if you're all minimum 5, why not just take 40 of those points, have a minimum 5 on all your attributes, and just spend the other 40 and just raising them however you want. And of course, if you're not interested in point buy systems, later in the book they do tell that you could roll 2d6 plus 3, and that will keep within the ranges for all those random die rolls. Now it's a point buy system for your attributes. Your races are interesting because there's 4 given in the core rulebook. Humans, and you have a choice between the civilized Ambrian nations or one of the barbarian clans. And then you choose, and there's the humans. You also can choose changelings, which are a group, which is a race of people who, when they were, there's stories in the old myths and legends, where elves would come by, take a human baby, and replace it with a changeling. They've taken that and put that concept here, where human children are missing, and in places a changeling, which no one knows about till later as the child grows up. It starts taking different, more elvish features, although they're not quite the same as regular elves. So there's a bit of mystery there. But they do have shape-shifting abilities, so there's a plus to that. Another race is the goblins. A very short-lived race, but very tenacious, as far as getting things done. And then there's also the ogres, which are big, brutish characters. And so those are races. Your classes, you got 3 archetypes, and you can either take the archetype as simply either the warrior, the mystic, or the rogue, or you could specialize it a bit. Okay, a warrior could be a knight, he could be sellsword, a duelist, or something else you can think of. Mystic could be a priest, it could be a sorcerer, it could be a wizard of the Ordo Magica. All have their different characters about them. Or you could be a rogue, but you can specialize it to be like the witch hunter, or the treasure hunter, or simply a thug. So you could easily shape it like this. Now, about magic in this game, unlike typical role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder and all that, it doesn't have, it has its magic, but it's not heavily loaded with it. It's very nuanced. It's there's rituals which could take at least an hour to perform, and then you get your regular magic spells. They don't have a whole lot of, but they're powerful enough to say, hey, you're a mystic and stuff for all they do. I do like that element of it because it kind of makes it, kind of gives it a more mysterious edge about the unknown with magic. And much as another problem with playing a magic user is that you have a higher chance of gaining more corruption, which means a quicker chance of becoming more like an abomination. So unless you're a sorcerer, which doesn't give a darn and just takes the chance, being one of a specialized order can reduce the amount of corruption your character can get. So they'll still get it. but not as much, or if you're careful. So you have this very cool setting. The slideshow, they have, in case you're wondering, all the artwork in this is by Martin Bergstrom, at least in the core rule book. Now there's a few, and it's one of the things that attracts me towards it. My thoughts about it is that, as I was looking through this and reading about this, I started noticing elements when I've noticed from other games. Like, every character has a shadow. And some of you may already know what I'm getting at here. And the shadow is the sort of an aura of the character. And only a couple people, types of people can have the ability to see a shadow. But if you see if the shadow is one way, that means there's no corruption in them. But the more corruption they get, a darker version of their shadow can show that. Like, for instance, you can see one person's shadow is like the green leaves. It's like green leaves of spring. But as the more corruption goes down, the leaves are dying, withering, looking, for those who are able to see it. Also, a setting like this is very, the theme about it, to exploring this dark land, again, nothing new of. I mean, it's adventuring for starters, but because of this narrow focus, it feels like, for one thing, it's like a Mirkwood Forest of The Hobbit. You got this dark, foreboding forest, and there's a whole lot of dangers into it and all that, but potential for a lot of great treasures. There's also that idea of the Game of Thrones. Not so much that there's a huge forest to explore, but again, the concept that there, beyond a certain point of the known world, there is this unknown land that you and your companions don't know much about. And there's a lot of dangers involved with that. And in particular, in Game of Thrones, you got north of the Great Wall, where if you go north, there's stuff you hear about, but no one's ever really confirmed it. But you may hear stories of those who did. Are they just making it up, or what? Or are they really telling the truth? But the tone of atmosphere of the artwork also I like is that sort of gritty realism that you find in, say, the Dark Souls video games, without the exaggerated, huge swords and weaponries that you may find there, but more of the more realistic kind. That's what I kind of like about this, is that when I look at the artwork on a lot of current RPGs, particularly in Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder, it has this I know it's fantasy, but it's also kind of over-the-top cartoonishness about it. As you see in the slideshow, and if you ever pick up this book yourself, the people look like, there's a bit of eeriness of it, but nothing like over the top. You don't have huge armored shoulder pads or things like that. You can feel like there's a bit more realism towards it. So with that being said, I mean, I also like the fact that this whole setting takes place in such, okay, you got this kingdom, a few kingdoms down below. Usually when you read role-playing games, you usually talk about this huge, vast world, of continents and all this, and you explore all that, and that's good. I mean, I like Numenera for that because of the story potential. Here it's very narrow. We got Kingdom of Ambria, surrounding the outer edges of the forest, you have the Barbarian Tribes, and inside is the deep forest where the past ruins and civilization and treasures are all in there. So, but also the dangers, like the monsters. So it's you kind of get that vast scale within that what can feel as a small area, So I'm not saying that's actually a small. Let me take a look at the let's see, find the map. Yeah, according to the scale, it's this little section here is like 100 kilometers. Okay, it's not small, but compared to usually when you watch a movie or when you watch a especially in fantasy and science fiction, everybody goes from here to there fast just on the change of the scene. You don't feel like the distance travel is appropriate for that scene to cross. And Game of Thrones is pretty does that itself, but you find that just about any of them. But here, you kind of feel like there's so much potential down there. It could be not just on top, but maybe there's some underground passages. And you don't have to go to the forest itself. There's plenty to do in the kingdoms of Ambria or with the Barbarian Tribes. And you also have the Titan Mountains and the Ravens on the eastern side, mountain range over there. So there's that. And let's see, anything else? The monsters I think are neat. Again, they don't list too much in this book. In the monster section, it talks about the monster's traits, how they work. But for instance, the elves are not your token kind. They're kind of like a dark version. Oh, here's a picture of an elf. See right there? They sort of have that sort of, that dangerous ones. The elves in this, you may find a couple of emissaries between the elves and the capital in Yendaros. I think there's one character they talk about. But generally, they are there to keep humans out of Davokar Forest, so they do not try and get to the treasures underneath, because they claim that there's this old pact from a long time ago that says humans can't go in, but and the fairies are going to keep that to the death. So there's a lot of conflict there. Also, other dangers, you have trolls of various size and intelligence, but you also got your human adversaries. I think this book covers enough to get through it and leave you room with to make up stuff of your own, as long as you know how to keep the theme. You got your giant spiders, as mentioned Mirkwood earlier. You got your predators, which are sort of large beasts. You have the Kanaran serpent and a bigger one called the lidworm. Although they don't talk about much dragons here. But also the worst kind are abominations. Creatures and people who have succumbed to the corruption. And corruption can come from any source, magic users especially, or some areas in the forest where if you just stay there, you gain corruption after a certain amount of time. Some areas even much more faster. But to come abomination is, you are losing yourself, and if you do, your player is gone. And of course you got your undead. Love that picture there. So I think, you get the idea, the tone, and the atmosphere, and the scale of what to do. That's what I like about this. Despite all the stuff I've seen, like the shadows and the corruption, I see that from Wraith the Oblivion. In Wraith the Oblivion, you play a ghost that has inside a shadow, which is sort of a voice talking to him and trying to get them to succumb to oblivion. So you see a similarity theme here. The Hobbit was the Mirkwood Forest. Well, it's similar to what they're going through in Symbaroum. And you see, the look and tone from Dark Souls games and Game of Thrones look. But a lot of times I can probably see that and it's like, oh, sort of, you get that feeling of, oh, I've seen this before and other stuff when I just play there. Here, it's all put together, shaped in its own way to where I feel it feels inviting. It's like, okay, I've seen this all before, but you execute it in such a way that makes me interested in this. That's what I like about it when I read through this. It's like, okay, you created your own thing. You're not, trying to hide the fact that, these are from other stuff. And I think I like the fact that these guys are from Sweden. So their area, neck of the woods, you can sort of sense, you kind of feel the influence from that part of the world where to get their art direction from. Going back to the character creation, about the point buy system. I've heard from a couple of reviewers about when it comes to point buy, there's always that thing for min-maxing. They just shape the character basically how they want it to be the best that they can, so little risk on their part. I feel that if I did that, I would lose interest in the game fairly quickly. I figure with the point buy system works best if you try to make a character, if you think about the character's history, what flaws it has, you can still you shape the point buy to give it its strengths and its limits. You understand that there's limits, and you use those limits to try to overcome them. And I think as long as you keep it within the character, and that allows you more role-playing opportunities, and that will make it to where you could probably have more fun with this. But if you just use the points just to increase the stats the best that you can, you're not thinking about making a character, you're just trying to make it to where you roll the dice in your favor. and it probably gets old very quickly. So I think something like this will probably work best if you try to make a character and get into your character, where its own history, its own life, its own goals. So that's my thoughts on that. Again, I'm not speaking as a strict player. So there you go. That is Symbaroum, the core rulebook. This game has, the website for this company has got PDF extension books, player's guide, and stuff like that. I haven't seen them on the shelves in the hobby store where I normally go to, but I'm sure I can if I want to. But I think the core rulebook has been satisfying enough. Before I go, I'd like to dedicate this video to the Gentleman Gamer. Gentleman Gamer is a guy from England who reviews role-playing games. He's played vast number of them, particularly of White Wolf games. He has done his own thing. He's told his own stories. He's given his own thoughts how to do role-playing games, and something about listening to a guy like that with an English voice just really draws you in. But I started watching his stuff, particularly with Numenera, and due to his video of Numenera, I got interested. I bought the books and have started enjoying that ever since. So I'd like to thank you, Gentleman Gamer, for all, the entertainment you brought. I know you don't produce as much as many. Last few videos are these quick videos for quick thoughts and all that stuff as I make this one. But he's been very busy trying to raise his son. Good luck to that. Congratulations again. And look forward to any new stuff you may bring about. But I dedicate this one to him, just sort of a thank you. And I hope you all pick this one up if you're into role-playing games. You want something different. Maybe the look of this is more to your style. Give it a go. Thank you all for watching. You have a nice day, and I'll post the links to the website for this and the Gentleman Gamer down below. Thank you.